Welcome to Inside Crime, the Experts. In this series, we'll bring you updates on what is making news in the world of crime. Our experts will take you inside some of the most challenging crimes and mysteries. Many of these are unsolved. They're the stories of serial killers, murders, organised crime, disappearances, scams, frauds and heist. And now to our experts. Tim Watson-Munro is Australia's leading criminal psychologist. He's delved into the minds and crimes of some of the most notorious criminals in Australia and around the globe. Dr. Xanthi Mallet is a world-renowned criminologist and associate professor of criminology at the Central Queensland University. And I'm Duncan McNabb. I started my life of crime as a detective in policing, then in major criminal defence in the corporate sector before heading to the media as an investigative journalist, author and TV producer. Now, first up, some developments on cases we've covered so far. Back in episode 1, we talked about the murders of Carol Clay and Russell Hill. Former airline pilot Greg Lynn was convicted of Carol Clay's murder, but not that of Russell Hill. Mr. Lynn's appeal, and we touched on this back in episode 5, is now underway in the first weeks of November in Victoria. And the Erin Patterson case, subject of our last episode, episode 11, is also back in the news. The Crown has already filed an appeal on the sentence handed down, and now Erin, we can confirm, has lodged her appeal. These are cases that just don't slip away into history.
Well, we predicted they wouldn't. It seems to have gained international traction. I guess Greg Lynn has too, being lost in the Alps and murder in the Alps and all the rest of it. But I did an interview this morning with TVNZ, or a derivative thereof. They're fascinated by it. And they asked me the question, why do you think people are so fascinated by it? I said, well, because the media keep feeding it. I had a friend, I didn't mention you, Duncan, who was covering the trial. CNN were there, the BBC were there. And I think the drivers behind that relate to Shakespeare and Macbeth and poison. People are fascinated by poisoning cases. And I said, in this case too, an air of religiosity, where the one person who survived was the pastor. And I think that probably there'd be a lot of church-going folk who would have latched onto that as proof of the Almighty. So it certainly is a case that's grabbed everyone's attention. What do you think, Xanth?
Yeah, I think it's also because she is so outwardly boring, and it was such a mundane pedestrian thing like a lunch. And I think it's for such a traumatic, awful event to be happening in such vanilla-ness. I think that's what's really grasping. You look at her and you go, you just don't see a mass murderer, with a long lead time. It's the premeditation. And you just look at her and go, you wouldn't notice her. You would walk past her without looking twice. And yet all of that was bubbling beneath the surface.
So do you think it's because she's so ordinary? People think, well, it's like we've said many times, the murderers that live amongst us.
Yep.
That it's often, the guy or the woman next door, the good father, all that sort of stuff, that dynamic.
Middle-aged white guy living in the suburbs is your serial killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who would think of someone as like Erin Patterson, the stay-at-home mum, the one without any friends outside her close family and her online friends, of course, but no physical friends she hasn't actually physically met. She then turns around, plans this terrible crime. I think at one stage plotting to have her husband Simon also sitting down to lunch. He decides not to come, so she blithely goes off.
Which probably saved his life.
Yeah, exactly. And then she decides, oh, well, I've got this prepared. I might as well kill the rest of the family instead. And that one fortunate, the only ray of sunshine in any of this is that Ian Wilkinson, the pastor, survived.
Although his life will be changed forever, given what he went through physically, emotionally. He lost his wife. He lost other members of the family. That family is destroyed from the inside out.
Absolutely devastated by her actions. This is a so-called loving mother.
And I would say, just on that, without cavilling with anyone, but there were some prodromal features to this case in terms of a number of prior attempts, allegedly, to poison her husband. And as I've said so often, I don't believe in coincidence. And the other Watson Munroism is if it waddles and quacks like a duck, chances are it's a duck. But they decided not to proceed with that. What do you think the reason behind that was, Duncan?
A couple of things. The only evidence that they had to support that theory, to support the original charges for the precursor acts, was the chronology.
Mm,
Unfortunately, there is no definitive medical evidence, forensic evidence, or anything. And
right.
the quirky thing about this is, while it's compelling, and the chronology just drives you towards that conclusion, the evidence is missing. The other thing that always strikes me about this too is that I don't think she intended anyone to be able to give evidence against her. And
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I agree too.
what are the mechanics of the crime? And Ian's there and he's giving evidence about what she did.
Which, yeah,
Similar
she never
plates.
meant for that to happen.
She never anticipated anyone surviving that lunch to give evidence about what she'd actually done. So she's got to backtrack and try and work out how the mechanics of her crime.
And when it
Mm.
comes down to the alleged attempts on Simon, even they would have had to run that afterwards, surely.
Then, when the trial judge came on board to start the preparations for the trial itself, the first thing he did was said, it's not going to happen this way. I'm going to split the charges. So we're going to have the lunch trial, and then we'll follow up with the Simon charges trial, the charges of attempted murder of Simon.
Mm.
And that would be the second trial. And then there was, of course, argument as to should we then suppress the results of the first trial so we could have the second trial? It got very messy. And then literally days before the trial commenced in April, the Crown decided to withdraw the Simon charges completely.
Look at the appeal or the attempted appeal now.
Yeah.
She doesn't accept it even when the verdict is unequivocally guilty of 3 counts of murder and an attempted murder. She's never going to admit to anything, my view.
They'd obviously not considered her personality when they thought that.
No, I think the prosecutors were thinking like prosecutors rather than getting inside the head of the person they were prosecuting. And I agree with you entirely.
But at the end of the day, it was the right call, wasn't it? They've got what they want because the other stuff is really ancillary to 3 convictions for murder, I would have thought.
Absolutely. She's in jail for life. She'll parole at this stage. Eligible in 33 years. Good luck with that.
Or maybe not if the Crown appeal succeeds. And I was asked about that also. I mean, why would the Crown bother? And I said because of not so much her, but the precedent it establishes. I mean, look, it's an academic exercise. Whether she does 33 years, 40 years, or dies in there, she's only eligible for parole at the age of 83. Most of us don't last that long, and I think their reasoning. Sorry, Seth?
Especially in prison, it is not like a good environment when you're elderly.
When you're in solitary. But I think the Crown's reasoning, without wanting to preempt anything, is that they don't want this as a common law precedent. They don't want this to be the yardstick which other triple murderers are judged by, where it could be argued in court, the case of Patterson that she got life, but a minimum of 33 years. Say you kill 3 people when you're 30, or like Knight, who was 19 when he killed 7, 33 years you will get out of jail. So I think they want to make sure that doesn't occur.
And the Crown is saying, well, that's not an assumption the judge can make.
If they couldn't say how long she was going to be in solitary, she'd already been in there 14 months at time of sentencing, and the WHO suggests 14 days is the longest. So I get what he was saying, and we're talking equity and people being treated humanely, and I understand she's in there for her own protection, but it's not ideal, right? No, I don't think anybody should be in solitary for that long.
She's in prison for a reason, but it's just problematic, and there's no foreseeable relief for her.
But she's not there because of her own misconduct. That's the other point. She's there because she's a target and will continue to be, and she's very vulnerable, they say.
Flip side of that, she's a target because she's so high profile, but she is ensuring she remains high profile.
That's a really good point. She's still on stage in this crime.
Yes.
It's always bugged me about this crime is Erin using this to lift her profile.
I think that's exactly what she was doing.
The arsonist who joins the fire brigade.
She wants to be the star of her own crime drama. So she is the other side of that is she is high profile, but it's what she wanted.
And she's going to drag those appeals out as long as possible.
Yes. which
Well,
means she's going to stay in
maybe.
the media as long as she can.
I was watching them last week in the Greg Lynn appeal, and that started at the time of recording. The appeal has started and it's back in court later the next couple of days. A way to go on that. But just to sit and listen to them having a crack at the people at the bar table, these people are really on their game.
And they would
Sorry, who was having a crack at who? I wasn't there.
Oh, sorry. It was both sides are at the bar table chatting away. The Crown and Mr.
Dermot Dan.
For Mr. Lynn, and the judges were just. It's great to watch them. They were just firing questions, interrupting if they thought it was going the wrong way. They needed some clarity. All very civilised, but they weren't taking any prisoners themselves either. It was robust discussions, I think we could politely call it. So interesting to watch, and God knows where that case is going to end up, because that's very interesting.
Well, that's a dog's breakfast, isn't it, potentially?
Yeah.
One, he says it's all a big accident. He wants a full acquittal. I just found the finding perverse, really.
Me too. It was bizarre.
Yeah, but I can't come to grips with it. What was running through the jury's mind, we'll never know. God knows we'd love to, but
We would.
it'll be interesting to see what the outcome of the appeal is. And if, for example, the conviction is quashed, it'll go back to the DPP to see whether they want to run it again.
Can I just ask something about the appeal before we move on? So the bar would be pretty high, wouldn't it, to grant and to uphold an appeal, because surely the judges will take into consideration the costs, sending it back through the courts, and the implications for the families. No?
It'll be straight on a point of law. Did the prosecution fuck up? What did they get right? But did the prosecution and the judge fuck up? And if so, was the fuck up to the extent that a miscarriage?
That it's a miscarriage. Yeah, it's a wrong.
We're talking about the Lynn
conviction
case,
Yeah.
or the Patterson.
Well, I was
case?
just generally, I was thinking, because you start sending people for retrial. Imagine what these trials are costing. It would have to be. I'd have to be pretty bloody sure an error had been made.
Yeah, and it's a good point. It's a two-step tango, in strictly speaking. The appeal court judges will decide whether or not there's a problem, and if so, is a problem of the magnitude that we cross the conviction and recommend a retrial. That's how it normally works in most states. They say appeal upheld, conviction quashed. We recommend a retrial. Then it goes back to the DPP to have a look at it and to see cost, chances of success.
Yeah.
What evidence is admissible? Because that might be a whole new ball game.
Yeah. With the Lynn case, that's a whole. Yeah.
It's a shit fight looking for a destination in the Lynn case. So they'll then have a look at it and think, well, can we win? If so, how can we win? What evidence is admissible? Blah, 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 blah. How might the trial go?
And can we bear listening to any more experts?
Oh, yeah.
You were there.
Oh,
I have a role to play. I am one, but
Yeah, in the Erin Patterson case, God bless them, they did a great job. But listening to experts on mobile phone towers and recalling data from someone's electronic devices is just mind-numbing. You just make it end, please.
But we're bloody glad they can do that.
Yeah, but
it's often that evidence that nails the offender,
Yeah.
That's what it is.
How you get to the nitty-gritty part that for fuck's sake. And the jury, to give them a full credit, the jury are paying attention. Colin Mandy and the barristers and the Crown Counsel in Erin Patterson's case are also trying to simplify it so they can understand it, the jury can understand it. And I look at the jury, take my hat off to them, just sitting there listening to all this and not going to sleep. Good on them; they did a bloody great job. But anyway, so Greg Lynn will have expert evidence up the wazoo if in the event it has to go back to a retrial. And there's a lot of questions about the ballistics evidence as well. So it's not. I don't think it's going to be quick. There is a lot to go through.
And if it goes back for retrial, and it's big if, it's going to be such a mess, because obviously he was found not guilty of Russell Hill's murder.
Yep.
So a lot of evidence, and you know better than me, but I would imagine would be inadmissible.
There's lots going to be.
Because it's going to be considered prejudicial.
Exactly. And they can't, I don't think, re-prosecute him for the not guilty, the jury not guilty and the Russell Hill.
Anyway, let's get on to heists.
On to something happier.
Well, yeah.
A crime in which no one got hurt apart from a lot of pride. And now to our feature story. We talked about the great golden toilet heist back in episode 8 and the cunning diamond psychic scam in episode 7. Heists are now back on the world's front pages, thanks to a genuinely daring caper of the Louvre Museum in Paris on Sunday, the 19th of October this year.
What an extraordinary caper that's been.
Yeah, it's at 9:30 a.m., a truck with an extendable ladder thing parked outside the Louvre, which is already open to the public, apparently been open for half an hour, according to the reports. Two villains dressed as construction workers, possibly the village people of thieves by the sound of things, scaled the ladder up to the first floor, used an angle grinder, not exactly the most subtle or quiet tool, to cut through a window pane, and they got into the Apollo Gallery, smashed some display cases, which would have made a lot of noise as well, and grabbed around $100 million in US dollars, that is, in jewels that once belonged to Napoleon and his consort. At 9:37 a.m., 7 minutes into this daring heist, the alarm finally went off in the building, and a minute later, 9:38, the villains were motoring away from the scene of the crime. Allegedly, they got hold of 9 pieces of jewellery, but dropped one on the way out. A break in the case, and it hasn't been a massive break so far, came from DNA they found on a helmet and gloves dropped during the getaway. Now, according to reports, 4 people have been arrested. 2 of them are probably involved. 2 of them are the actual perpetrators by the sound of things, and the other 2 are peripheral by the look of it. But an incredible heist, daring, smart.
Wasn't it DNA that nabbed Ronnie Biggs in the end? They found an item in their hideout. No, it was fingerprints.
They plan this heist and then they leave behind items.
Yeah.
That sounds like something out of a crap movie, doesn't it?
I suppose every crim makes a mistake, which is how they get caught.
Yeah, but
like, yeah,
that's a big one though, right?
It's pretty dumb. It's good. The prosecutor who's handling it has had a number of interesting observations. She reckons it wasn't really international organised crime at one point. She'll probably change that view fairly shortly, and points to the fact that the 4 thieves they believe were from a housing estate, low income, ragtag thieves, and how they've upscaled their business. And I'm thinking, really? And if they were that dumb, aside from leaving some items behind, if they were that dumb, surely when the cops arrested them, they would have actually found them Coke cans, a couple of Domino's pizza boxes, and $100 million worth of jewelry. But the jewelry.
Well, how do you fence that, by the way?
Exactly.
How do you fence $150 million worth of Napoleonic jewelry?
Very identifiable. Surely that's been stolen to order.
Hypothetically, I would suggest that, someone's thought, I want them either as a collector, very lofty, or someone who thinks, well, it's an easy catch because the museum's so fucked up, which we'll get to shortly, I would imagine. And they can take them, break them down, recut them, and sell them. Profits substantially, drops like a stone. But at the same time, not bad money for an enterprising thief either. But the prospect that a couple of people from a housing estate have thought, oh shit, let's go knock over the Louvre and knock off Napoleon's jewels. I just don't believe that for a second. Yet the prosecutor sort of hints that might be the case. She's had so many each-way bets. It is like the Melbourne Cup. You've got an each-way bet on the entire field. I don't get it. Go back to the basics of this. They had their ladder truck, which they've stolen. Smart move. They know where they've got to go to, so they've been in place, or maybe they've been getting a bit of help from inside. Who knows? They know exactly where the jewels are. They're close to the window. They cut through the window. They've got angle grinders. They smash it. They know that security staff are a really crack team. CCTV doesn't quite notice for a while. The museum guards...
Hold it, wasn't the CCTV not operational in that part of the museum?
I think so, yes. Which, I think you're right. The planning, we can't see it. Yeah. The only people who really witnessed it and did anything were the people who were in the museum gallery at the time looking at things, and there's some phone cameras.
Maintenance, probably thought it was maintenance.
Yeah. And typical of today, I suppose, rather than actually try and interfere, they photographed it instead. That's how it happened. Museum guards don't even notice. You would have thought that an angle grinder, fucking big hole in the window, would have been a giveaway as a starting point.
Yeah, but even if you accept that, because they're dressed as workmen, because it takes some balls, frankly, doesn't it, to pull this off, right, with an angle grinder. But when you start smashing cabinets with things in it, surely, as a security guard, you think, think something isn't right.
It's no coincidence.
Panther.
I was going to say, it's no coincidence that Clouseau came from France, right? Maybe
Yes.
that's their mentality,
Yeah,
uh,
chatting earlier with
asinine
our
to the core.
chatting earlier with our dear producer Sophie, and she made a very astute observation. In the time it takes to hard boil an egg, they'd got away with 100 million US worth of booty.
Yeah.
This heist has just gone viral around the world
It's
because
because it's ridiculous, right?
it is. Who'd have thought that in the probably what should be the most secure art museum in the world, that they've just basically, through two people dressed as village people, have traipsed in with an angle grinder in one hand, pinched everything, got back down the ladder. It was nicely done. I mean, sit back and have a look at it. They've got in there at 9:30 on a Sunday morning. They've got access directly to the street so they don't have to run through the building, for example. So that's a problem negated. They're there at 9:30 on a Saturday morning when I would imagine the average Parisian is probably contemplating a coffee and a bad coffee and a croissant. So the streets are pretty quiet. I mean, they went back to their housing estate. That's not too bright. One of them tried to leave the country 6 days later. Well, if I was doing it, I would have planned my exit slightly better. I would have been on the
Well, tell us how you would have done it.
well, I would have scarpered quite quickly, and I would have, and I'm working on the presumption that this was a crime to order. Then
Hmm.
you've got a series of cutouts, which is why you've got a crime gang from the suburbs. So they're cutout after cutout after cutout. I probably would have arranged to hand over the booty to a middleman somewhere quite remote out of Paris, and I would have been on a train or a plane as fast as possible, anywhere but in France, which in the first couple of hours of what would appear to be a ramshackle investigation, you'd be well gone by that stage. Just as an anecdote, I suppose, I did one of these art heists years ago as an investigator, I hasten to add. And it's why I think that this is a steel to water job. A bloke broke into a prominent Australian family's home inside the house, just doing a break and enter. He sees something on the wall. He says, aha, that's a Picasso. It wasn't. He's no art connoisseur. So he steals a whole raft of paintings. And the bloke, through an intermediary, one of my underworld acquaintances, contacts me and says, I've got this bloke, he's got a stolen Picasso. And we want to try and get it back to the owners for $1 on the side. So, no, mate, this is back in the day where you say to them, get me some photographs of it. I don't see whether you're bullshitting or not. So I got Polaroids dropped in my letterbox. And it wasn't a Picasso. It was, I think it was an Ian Fairweather or something or other. It's a whole raft of great paintings. I've got them all, including a couple of Dobells. Negotiations didn't work out at all. The blokes ended up with a house full of these dodgy paintings he can't offload. No one wants to ransom them back. Insurance companies aren't interested, blah, blah, blah. They eventually found some of the paintings up in a church in Wahroonga, a few others scattered around the place. And one of the paintings, a Dobell, was bought by the former Chief Magistrate of New South Wales, Murray Farquhar.
Good old Murray, honest Murray.
Genuinely, Murray's a crook, as we all know, went to jail for a few things. Murray's in a pub at Coogee on the beachfront of Sydney. One of the dodgy people sidles up to Murray and says, I've got this nice painting. Do you want to buy it for cash? Murray looks at it, thinks, oh, it's a Dobell. Good eye for art, Murray. Murray borrows the money from his chemist mate. Right. And then heads down to the local art restorer and says, can you fix this up for me? I've just bought it. I got a great price on it. The art restorer takes one look at it and says, this is so bloody hot, I can barely touch it. Calls the cops. Murray gets locked up, goes to trial. He's acquitted because he genuinely bought the painting for what he thought was a reasonable market value. So
without the suspicion that it might be stolen.
Yeah, well,
Murray,
as a chief magistrate.
Dude has come up to me in a pub.
Yeah, and because I investigated his story, and he was actually genuine. How fast is the DNA process, for example, Xanth? I'm not sure how long this sort of stuff takes.
Oh God, well that really depends, doesn't it? I mean, I would imagine they would be fast tracking, so this would go straight.
You wouldn't want to send it to Queensland, right?
No. Well, they've outsourced all of theirs anyway, a lot of it internationally. So they would triage it. I imagine it could be done in a couple of days if they wanted to do it fast.
Fingerprints are, I suppose, probably a bit quicker. Back in the old days, it required a person in a white coat and a filing cabinet. These days, I would imagine just once you've lifted the print, processing would be quite fast.
Processing would be pretty quick, but they would have eyes over it at the end of that process too.
Yeah, to make sure they've got it right.
Yeah.
I suppose
one of the questions that's been asked of me about the Louvre is, what's the psychological thrill? Is it all about the thrill? Is it the danger? I'm sure it is thrilling if they get away with it, but I think the general proposition is that psychopaths have a very high threshold for anxiety.
Mm.
I mean, the idea of getting me on a ladder, let alone using an angle grinder,
I love a
smashing.
good angle grinder. What does that say? And I
You're
don't
good
mind
at it.
heights.
Are we
Mm.
back at Bunnings again for our crime
There we go.
calls?
And then getting into the museum, smashing up glasswork, most people would, it would send chills up and down their spine, right? But not these people, because they have a very high threshold for anxiety. So I'm sure it gives them a thrill. They're attracted to danger, some research suggests, because it's the only way they can get a thrill. The
Yeah.
things that normally excite us, pretty passé and vanilla for those people.
Would that also suggest that uh, maybe the actual money they get from it is almost secondary? It's bonus.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're
Although they're in a housing estate, with great respect to my friends in housing estates. But the lure of that sort of money, I think, would be very tempting for quite a number of people, actually.
It's going to be bloody hard to spend that though. If you start from a fairly low income to suddenly having multiple millions or whatever, like somebody at some point is going to go, you didn't have a Lamborghini last week.
Yes, it's the classic crime problem. The first thing you do is not show it off.
Well, yeah, but how many people make mistake like they can't help themselves, can they?
And the black market from diamonds is just up the road, really. Just zip up to Antwerp, the diamond cutting capital of the world.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you're going to have a black market, it's always very nice to have your black market very close to where your source is. So,
Did you hear the rumor that the heist was actually like a promo for the new Now You See Me movie? Because apparently,
really,
yes, did you not? This went wild on social media. Yeah. So it's been speculated. Apparently, the theory hasn't gained much traction, but there's an uncanny similarity to the heist for the heist to the plot of the movie. Yeah, so there was this rumor started because it's kind of like this new film coming out, and wouldn't that be, I'm not advocating for stealing from a museum, but wouldn't it have been a great,
great promo.
right? Because everyone around
I
the
love
world
how
is
these
talking
rumours
about it.
start. There's
That's
a conspiracy surrounding everything, by the way.
But
oh yeah.
this would be a fun one though, right?
What other heists has there been? This one's the most recent, but there's been some other big ones.
There have been. I suppose the first heist at the Louvre of any note was in 1911 when one of the workers there pinched the Mona Lisa and kept it.
Are you joking?
Oh, yeah. Years
I don't
ago.
even like the Mona Lisa. She looks bloody miserable.
Well, as breathlessly reported in this case, the Mona Lisa was only a couple of a gallery or so away. I thought they weren't interested in pinching the painting.
No.
That's the point. The one that there's an Australian one that I was fascinated about, the Golconda d'Or diamond, was on display at Sydney Town Hall. Big, whopping great. And it was sort of parked there and everyone's looking past and and someone pinched it. right under the noses.
What, it stuck it in their pocket?
And they eventually locked up two blokes, one called Michael Hurley, who's a famous Australian criminal who was running cocaine.
Oh, yeah.
But Michael was a gentleman thief and he was very good at it as well. And he knocked off the Golconda d'Or. They arrested him and his brother, and their defense was he did it. And they got off. But
I was going to say,
they never found
that's not an unusual defense.
Because they couldn't prove it, right?
Yep.
Which one it was.
They couldn't prove which one it was, so the jury let them both go. The Golconda d'Or has never been seen since. So just a curious social media thing you mentioned earlier too. There was also, as this heist started running around, there was the photographs of the two alleged perpetrators, which were wrong, of course. There's a bizarre website which had sort of best looking criminal ever arrested. So
Oh God.
those blokes, yeah. And there was it went viral as well. The very stylish French detective at the crime scene at the Louvre with a fedora hat and a scarf looking $1 million. And everyone said, oh, that French detective is fabulous. Where did they find him? Well, he looked a lot like Alain Delon. When I first looked at him, thought, really? I mean, I love French gangster movies, so Alain Delon's embedded in my brain. Complete bullshit. Someone just made it up, but it was great. And everyone believed it. They just loved it. And I think we're going to get more of that as it goes along. The curiosity is that the four they've locked up so far haven't really given much in the way of information, and the diamonds are still missing. So that suggests that they are probably long gone, I would suggest. Gone off to their new owner.
In Antwerp.
Again, that suggests that it was like a premeditated, specific theft, surely.
Oh, absolutely. And what happens to these guys? They keep their mouth shut, they go to jail, they do some time, they get out, and there's lo and behold, there's a bit of money for them.
Yeah,
Or maybe
quite a
there's
bit
not any
like
money,
that.
in which case there's a new Netflix series
Do
about
we know if the people they have arrested and currently are the accused, do we know if they have any prior criminal history?
apparently a couple of the blokes did, yes, for
Right.
petty theft and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Not exactly criminal masterminds. I
Well,
think,
there's a movie in this.
oh,
100% there's a
yeah,
movie in this.
I
Well, there
think,
may already be if we listen to like the wild rumors online. Now you see me too.
yeah, I think it's just
Yeah.
smart to hire some fairly mundane criminals to do so and instruct them properly, have them do the job. Get
And
the
don't
stuff.
leave shit behind with your DNA on, boys.
There are probably a couple of cutouts between him and the people that have done the
Yeah,
job.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
The house of cards has to collapse before they get the
Yeah,
person responsible.
yeah.
And
Well,
it might.
that's a highly sophisticated theft in terms of money,
Hmm.
but not in terms of execution. But it reminds me of a case that I did in Melbourne, I don't know, back in the 80s. There used to be, I think it was a Commonwealth Bank on the corner of Lygon Street and Victoria
Yeah.
Parade. And this guy planned it to a T, armed robbery, went in with a boiler suit, the balaclava, uh, put a note across the counter to the teller and, give us all your money, which he did, the sensible thing to do. He took off. By the time he got home, the cops were waiting for him because he'd left his wallet on the counter with his
Wasn't
driver's license.
that wasn't Blazy, was it?
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name, to be honest.
I remember writing. I think that's the case. And
What a great case.
oh, the cops dubbed him the Maxwell Smart of crime, and he hated that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose that's why they're criminals and not rocket scientists.
Well, you can look at some other great heists, for example, where you might argue they are. Think about the great bookie robbery, for example, in Melbourne.
Oh,
I
yes,
mean, that was an extraordinary heist involving a lot of money at the time. Case unsolved, correct? To
correct.
date.
Yep. A few people
Some red
point,
hot suspects, but no one's ever arrested.
and again, it's all the suspects saying no, it was him. Why I don't think this was by accident. These things are incredibly well planned. There's lots of surveillance beforehand, as Zath and you were both saying. They knew where the cameras were or weren't, or if they were turned on or not. They knew the routine of the guards. They knew that Sunday morning was a great time to be there, not only to get in, to get what they wanted, but also to get out and make their escape. But they just did as so many crims did, made that one tragic, fatal mistake.
That is such a massive mistake. That doesn't speak to the same people who planned it. I don't know. There's something, it feels off kilter in some way.
Yeah, the French authorities haven't been terribly forthcoming in how they actually found them. I just wonder whether or not, as they dropped one of the pieces of jewelry as well, so they only got away with 8 rather than 9. Did they also drop the jacket and think, oh shit? As they're driving up, think, oh God, what have I done? And
Like Dad's Army, isn't it?
It
Really?
is, yeah.
yeah, everything's going beautifully until you make that one mistake, and then you think, do I go back and try and recover, or do I just press on? Instinct, I think you just press on.
You never go back for your hat, but maybe they should have this time.
Thanks, Zanti. Thanks, Tim. And thanks, everyone, for watching or listening to Inside Crime the Experts. Our episodes are also available on podcasts on your favourite platforms. See you next time, and please like our channel or podcast, and please subscribe. Thank you.